Hey guys, welcome back to the neighborhood. Let's talk about the KZ ZSX. Let me go ahead and say up front that I've been putting off this review for far too long. And my reasoning is that I wanted to do this IEM some justice. For IEMs under $50, this won't be the top pick for everyone, but for me, it's a good one to consider. So let's get into it. The KZ ZSX is the successor of the KZ ZS10 Pro, and it's aptly named the Terminator. Maybe the idea is that this IEM terminates all others in its price range. I don't really know about that, but like the Terminator, it is somewhat intense in regards to its overall presentation, and also, like the Terminator, I love it. And when I say intense, what I mean by this is that it tends to push sonics towards your eardrums throughout most of the frequency response spectrum. On graphs, it looks like there might be too much of a mid-recession, but I ultimately don't perceive this to be the case, as it sounds more like other frequencies are elevated in their intensity rather than the mids are being recessed. Vocals are well pronounced as well, but not overly forward. The treble and upper mid-range are also pronounced, but rarely harsh, although this set does test my treble tolerance at times. As its mid-range does not appear to drop below 10 dB from any of its peaks for the most part, I would classify this as a U-shaped IEM rather than a V-shaped one. The ZSX has a sub-bass emphasis to it, and it rolls off smoothly from the mid-bass into the mids. Impact is good, and it digs relatively deep. Not as deep as say a TFZ number 3, but I think the bass magnitude will be enough to satisfy both bass heads and audiophiles alike, without offending either. The bass seems to be relatively fast and punchy when it needs to be, and soft and somewhat looming when other tracks call for that. Mid-bass lovers might find it to be somewhat lacking in emphasis in that region, and also in upper bass registries as well. But I'd much prefer this presentation to one where the bass overwhelms and dominates the mids. Because most sonics have some forwardness to them, I would say that the ZSX's biggest weakness might be listening fatigue due to its overall intensity. This is a fabulous IEM to pull out and listen to every once in a while, but I don't think that I could listen to it on a daily basis without increasing my overall level of anxiety. The Fit is also a bit on the chunkier side, and while I ultimately find it comfortable for shorter listening sessions, it did wear on me after hours of use. Another weakness of the ZSX is that it's relatively sensitive. It does tend to pick up hiss on amplifiers which are rather noisy. However, it does play well with an IE match from Hi-Fi if your amplifier of choice is too noisy for it. The Zen DAC from Hi-Fi was too noisy to run this in balanced operation, but running this amplifier unbalanced surprisingly produced limited additional noise. My favorite DAC amplifier combination for the ZSX was running the Goldnote DS10 as the DAC into a Giselli Labs Archel Pro using the Hi-Fi IE match. My favorite tips for this set included JVC spiral dots and RHA dual density tips, both for sonics and for comfort. I will also note that the cable that came with the ZSX wasn't the worst, and the included microphone performed relatively well on Discord chats, but some people have reported sound degradation in the microphone cable, although I could not discern any differences in my set. The Soundstage could also be considered somewhat of a weakness for the ZSX. Generally, I would describe the stage as rather average to intimate. It's not as intimate as say something like an Etymotic, but it isn't particularly wide or deep either. However, it does have more depth to its stage than it does width. Irregardless of its limited soundstage, sonics do image accurately within space, separate well from one another, and are distinctively defined. In spite of its limited staging, I never really found it to get overly congested. Despite its driver count, which consists of 5 individual balanced armatures paired with an additional 10mm dynamic driver per channel, the sound was extremely integrated well overall. In fact, for a hybrid, this is one of the best integrated IEMs that I've heard to date, which is extremely surprising to me given its cheaper price point. The KZ ZSX was also extremely detailed to my ear. Again, this characteristic was especially surprising to me given its price point. But with this clarity comes a certain double-edged sword, as the ZSX is very revealing, which means that it exposes poorly recorded music. If there is a grain in the track, you will hear it, and I wouldn't say that it produces sibilance in music, but I would say that if sibilance exists in the track itself, it isn't going to really cover it up either. Some have reported that the ZSX might have a metallic timbre to it due to its heavy use of balanced armatures, but I did not find this to be the case in my testing on my gear. Instead, I found the ZSX to have a rather neutral, natural timbre which was clear, intense, and invigorating, with just enough air at the top end to elevate this IM past most of its competition in this price point. In the end, the KZ ZSX is a revealing, detailed IM for intensity junkies that I can't really recommend for a daily driver for most, but I would recommend it as a secondary IM for most people to get their clarity fix every once in a while. Its timbre was surprisingly accurate and its overall presentation pleasing. I'd like to think that maybe KZ chose the moniker of the Terminator for this IM because it has a hybrid design consisting of balanced armatures supported by a dynamic driver. Kind of like the Terminator with living tissue integrated on top of a metal skeleton. And for those wondering, I definitely recommend the ZSX over the ZS10 Pro overall. But for those looking for a slightly more relaxed listen with more of a mid-bass than sub-bass emphasis and a better fit than the ZSX, you might want to stick with the ZS10 Pro. The ZS10 Pro may also fit the masses better due to their more ergonomic shape, but again, I had no difficulties with the ZSX Fit myself. And just a reminder guys, the neighborhood's growing in subscribers, and at the 1K mark, I'll do another random drawing for another set of KOS KSC 75s. To be considered for this giveaway, all you have to do is be subscribed here on YouTube, but you'll also be granted extra entries by also subscribing at the channel's other platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, the blog, or on the Patreon. The Patreon is only $1.50 a month, and it will get you access to early written reviews from me. So if you follow InToIt reviews across all 5 platforms, you'll increase your odds by having 5 total chances to win. And the faster the channel grows, the more giveaways we'll be able to have. So share with your friends and have them subscribe as well. And best of luck to everyone. And with that, I'm out for now.